everyone. My name is Paige Gibbons Backus, and I am a site manager here at Brentsville Courthouse Historic Center, coming to you from the Williams-Dawe House to tell you a story of historic preservation for Historic Preservation Month. Because here inside the Williams-Dawe House, Prince William County purchased this property in 2022, and we are currently working on restoring the property. But this is not the first time here in the house's history that the house has looked like this and has needed to be restored. It has actually happened twice. And so in the 1930s, when the last owner of the property at the time, Marion Cooper, passed away in the 1930s, the house had been left vacant for about 10 years. And if you don't live in a house, if you don't maintain it, if you don't keep it alive, it can very quickly fall apart. And so by the 1940s, the house has already looked similar to what we see here today. We hear stories of the window panes being broken, of there being dilapidated and cornfields that come all the way back to the rear of the house. We have stories of the walls being cracked, there being the plaster cracked outside, and so the house was in pretty rough shape. However, the house was saved by a woman named Agnes Webster and her husband, Nicholas Webster. And the story goes that Agnes came across the house one day and she saw it in its dilapidated state, but she very quickly fell in love. She fell in love with the symmetry of the house, she fell in love with the elegance of the house, and she quickly went back to her husband and brought him to see the property. She convinced him to buy this house that was falling down, and in 1941, they purchased it for $3,500. However, it was in such bad shape that they had to spend that same amount of money, $3,500, to restore the house. And so a lot of what we see here inside the house today is actually from that 1940s restoration that was done by Agnes and Nicholas Webster. Now, the Webster family, they were an integral part here of the Williams-Dawe House's history, as well as the history here of Brentsville. Nicholas, he was a documentary filmmaker. So he actually traveled the world making documentary films that he would actually show for the local residents here inside the Brentsville Courthouse, which at the time was being used as a community center. Agnes, she was a housewife, she was a mother, she was also an artist. And so she had created countless pieces of needlework, paintings, dolls that are all reflective here of her experiences and Brentsville. She also served as a columnist, as the correspondent, creating a column called Letters of Brentsville. And it's from a lot of her letters that we can learn what day-to-day life was like here in Brentsville in the 1940s and 1950s. And so we can learn about what it was like for residents when the road that came here through Brentsville was paved. We can learn a little bit about who was traveling where and visiting who on any particular day. We could also learn a little bit about some of the different events and some of the different happenings that took place here in Brentsville during that time period from the Webster family. And so Agnes and her husband were incredibly important to the preservation of the Williams-Dawe House, but it's also her children as well, Delancey and Juliet Webster. And this is another story of historic preservation because Agnes, his children, Delancey and Juliet, they are still alive today. And so we were actually able to sit with them and have what's called an oral history and learn from them about what it was like to grow up here inside the house and what it was like to live here in Brentsville. And so we have some very interesting stories from the Websters about their experiences in the pond that the Websters built back behind the house that they dug out and that they filled in with water. We've learned a little bit about some of the different barns and some of the different animals in those buildings that were here in the house in the 1940s and 1950s. We were able to learn about what it was like to play with local friends and neighbors, including a man named Morgan Breeden, who grew up in the house next door. And so it's a fantastic connection for us to be able to speak to those who have true connections here inside the house as we work to preserve the history of Brentsville as well as the history of the Williams-Dawe House. If you're interested in learning more information about the Williams-Dawe House, we are consistently updating our webpage with more research that we have found, with the information that we've gotten from local residents and those who are connected here with the Williams-Dawe House, and uploading new pictures and uploading new information. So make sure you check that out on our website at www.pwcva.gov/history, or you can follow us on social media. Thank you for joining us.